Week 7 waiver wire. Let's get it started. Do you have questions at quarterback? Don't worry, I got you. Geno Smith. All right, hear me out. He faces Arizona, who's the worst defense against the quarterback position. He's got the weapons. I think this is a plus matchup. Fire up Geno Smith if you need a quarterback. Quarterback 5 from last week, Sam Howell. He's had 18 or more fantasy points 4 out of the last 5 weeks. Down game last week, but he plays the Giants this week. They're middle of the pack against the quarterback position. Howell should be solid. 6 teams are on a bye this week, so some of y'all are desperate. If you desperate, you can start Desmond Ridder. He going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not a great matchup, but he was quarterback 4 last week. Quarterback 6 the week before that. Back-to-back weeks with 300 or more yards and 2 touchdowns. Now we had 3 picks last week, but I don't think he gooses yet. I'm not saying it's a good match. I'm not saying it's a good start, but some of y'all out there desperate, and desperate times call for desperate measures. Are you weak at wide receiver? Don't worry, I got you. Curtis Samuel has had double-digit fantasy points in the last 3 games. And yes, I know, he was helped out by touchdowns in 3 straight games. Well, clearly they're getting him involved. I think you stay in the flames. Fire up Curtis Samuel. Next up, Wan'Dale Robinson. 8 receptions last week, 62 yards. I think that he's going to get more involved as the season goes on. He came into this year injured. I think he's a solid grab. Joshua Dobbs. This guy is getting the targets, and as long as Gardner Minshew is going to be the quarterback, I think he's going to be a solid start. Double-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. Fire him up. Raheem Shaheed is a deep threat that can always take it to the house. He's a great start when you need a flyer with upside. And Kendrick Bourne has these kind of games. First game of the year, 11 targets with 2 touchdowns. Then last week he has 11 targets, 10 receptions. I like Kendrick Bourne, but they don't get him involved enough on a regular basis. He's a solid flyer. 3 wide receivers you should stash, assuming you got space. It's by apocalypse. I know how it is out there. Rashee Rice, if somebody is going to break out for this Kansas City Chiefs team, it's going to be him. Jameson Williams, he's extremely talented, and I definitely think he's going to get more involved over time. If you got space, it's worth it. People are starting to drop Jackson Smith and Jigba. I totally understand that, but if you have an extra spot on your bench, I do think it's worth to hold on to him. He's like a handcuff. If there's an injury in front of him, I definitely think he pops off, and even if not, towards the end of the year, he should be pretty good. Now, I know most of these people are rostered, but if they're out there, they're worth the stash. Are you having a rough time at running back? Don't worry, I got you. Kareem Hunt, he had 16 points against the vaunted San Francisco 49ers defense, 12 carries for 47 yards and 3 receptions and a touchdown. Not too bad. I do think it's going to be a 2-headed monster. He won't be the lead back, but I think he gets enough work to be viable. Fire him up. We don't know whether or not Christian McCaffrey's going to miss time, nor who the official backup's going to be. Jordan Mason's played solid, but there's a chance that once Elijah Mitchell is back healthy, he takes the role. And just to be clear, we don't know if CMC's out in the first place. Roll the dice if you want. If you're a CMC manager, you definitely want to have one of these 2. Otherwise, it's really a roll of the dice. It can go either way. Craig Reynolds could be filling in for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs missed last game and could possibly miss this game. David Montgomery got banged up last week, so there's a chance he doesn't play in week 7. Craig Reynolds looks like he would be the viable starter. He hasn't really done much with the opportunity. When David Montgomery is out, he really didn't step up. I think he needs both the starters to sit for him to be actually viable. Other than that, he's really just a flyer. Same thing with Keontae Ingram. Keontae Ingram was meh last week. He did have 4 yards a carry, but it looks like they're splitting his backfield. In week 6, he only played 36% of the snaps and had 37% of the carries. Whereas in week 6 for DeMarcado, he was on 45% of the snaps, but only had 7% of the carries. Heck, even Damian Williams got involved. 16 snaps for 30% of the carries. At the end of the day, this is going to be a messy backfield. I'm really not feeling it. Kyron Williams looked great last week, but he had an ankle injury. His backup, Ronnie Rivers, also got injured and is expected to miss 4 or 5 weeks with a PCL sprain. If they both miss, there's a chance that Zach Evans is going to be the starter. Zach Evans is a deep league flyer. You need multiple people to miss, and you still don't really know if he's going to be the starter or not. Just figured I'd let you know. 3 running backs you may want to stash, assuming you have space. I know it's by apocalypse. Chuba Hubbard, who is barely over 50% rostered. Chuba Hubbard's on a bye, but if Miles Sanders isn't healthy after the bye week, he's going to be a viable option against Houston. Speaking of Houston, Devin Singletary, he had 12 carries last week and didn't look terrible. He's more of a deep league flyer. There's a chance he gets some more touches moving moving forward. Last week, he was in for 52% of the snaps and had 40% of the rush attempt. That's pretty good compared to Dameon Pierce, who only had 35% of the snaps but had 3% of the rush attempts. That's looking a bit like a split. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not excited about Dameon Pierce in the first place, but I do just want to keep Devin Singletary on your radar, just in case something pops off. He's more of a handcuff than a play every week, but keep him on your radar. And don't look now, but playoff Leonard Fournette that is going to be visiting the Bills. Apparently, he's fielded some interest from several teams, and he may sign with the Buffalo Bills. This obviously isn't a grab and play. This is a grab and stash, just in case he's still viable. Bills are a good offense. Honestly, he may just be there to mess up James Cook workload, not necessarily be fantasy viable. Are you having a tough time at tight end? Don't worry, I got you. I'm gonna keep it real with you. It's slim pickings. Jonnu Smith is the best option out there at the moment. Double-digit fantasy points in 3 straight weeks. That's as good as it gets right now. I do think that Michael Mayer is a sleeper. I'm not super confident in him. Obviously, look at his numbers. He hasn't been necessarily lighting it up, but with all the bye weeks, desperate times calls for desperate measures. And Dalton Schultz is a definite stash. He's on bye this week, but he's had touchdowns in the last 3 games and 7 or more targets in the last 2. He's involved in the offense. He's been a 6th best tight end or better the last 3 weeks. I definitely think he's worth a stash. Are you desperate for a defense? Don't worry, I got you. The Cleveland Browns. Everybody and their mother dropped them when they saw that they were going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Well, now they get the Indianapolis Colts with a backup quarterback. This is one of the best defenses in the league. I definitely think they're worth a grab. Fire them up. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders, who have had 9 or more points in back-to-back games, and now they get the Chicago Bears, most likely without Justin Fields. Yes, please, fire them up. They were harassing Mac Jones. What do you think that they're gonna do to this backup? Yeesh. And the Jets go on bye this week, which means a bunch of people could be dropping them. If they get dropped and you have an extra spot, stash the Jets defense. When they come back, they play the Giants. Yes, please. Thank you. At this point in the year, we're trying to manufacture wins. Anything that can give you an advantage on any particular week, do that. You need wins now. Also, no one in their right mind is dropping this team, but if this defense gets dropped, you pick them up immediately. The Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys have had 2 bad games and they're going into a bye. If someone drops the Cowboys, you pick them up immediately. They're one of the best defenses in the league and one of the few defenses that can score you 37 points. If someone is dumb enough to drop them, please pick them up. And yes, I would drop players to hold on to the Dallas Cowboys. And if you can't drop players, you might want to trade somebody. I ain't giving up the Dallas Cowboys defense. Look at this schedule. Rams, meh. The Eagles, all right, the Eagles are solid, but you know, the Jets did work against them last week. But look at this stretch from week 10 on. Oh my gosh. Giants, love that. Panthers, give me that. Washington, yes please. Seattle hasn't been playing great. And they got a gauntlet to end the year, but we're trying to win these games and make the playoffs. Playoffs? Playoffs? I'm just trying to win a game. If you play fantasy football, you're going to want to hear this. Week 7 is here, and it's one of the biggest bye weeks you're going to have to deal with. There are 6 teams on a bye. Bengals, Cowboys, Jets, Panthers, Texans, Titans. There's a lot of firepower on the bye week this week. Make sure you're ready. Week 7 is going to be jam-packed with episodes. Click here to stay tuned.